Welcome friends back to another r/prorevenge video. The only thing sweeter than that sweet taste of revenge are the moments when people hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. That said, our first story of the day is by Janak. Evil boss lady fired me and didn't give me my last check for a month. Ka-ching! I got a job as an EMT after a 6-month community college training course. I was woefully unqualified. I barely knew the basics, but the teacher kept saying, "Don't worry, the new job will train you when you're hired." I got hired at an ambulance transport place that just took people to dialysis and things like that, not emergency services. But there was no training. I was told to figure it out myself, etc. I didn't know what I was doing, and I quickly realized this wasn't a fit. But I continued to try. On day 4, I was let go. I had worked 4 days total. I signed a paper with reasons they were firing me, all of which I agreed with, so I signed. I asked if they had my check ready. The man who was doing the paperwork said they didn't, but they'd send it to me. Not exactly legal, but okay. I waited and waited, no check. I called to see where it was. I knew they were supposed to get that to me pretty quickly by law. I called a few times to see where it was. The boss lady was so rude, hanging up on me, not taking calls. When I did get someone, they'd say, "We'll mail it." I started researching labor laws because it was getting ridiculous. That's when I found out they have to give me a day's pay for every day my check is late, which was $150. So I stopped calling and started waiting. I finally got a check, but it was a payroll check. And it turns out I had worked 2 days in one pay period and 2 on the next one. So I called again to tell them and got yelled at by the boss lady. Waited another 2 weeks, got my last check, and filed my claim with the labor board for not getting my final paycheck in the time allowed by law. It had been about a month by then. First meeting was a mediation where we tried to settle. Boss lady wasn't having it. She kept saying she didn't owe me anything and her offer was $500. She said this was all a setup by me. I knew they owed me closer to $3,000 and she didn't have a leg to stand on, so I refused. She stomped out and said I'd be hearing from her lawyer. Next, we went before a labor judge. This time, evil boss had done her research. Every excuse an employer can use for not paying me the last check, she used. She said I moved. She said I never tried to call them, that they tried to call me numerous times. She said they tried to call me to get my address, but my number was changed. She said her husband was a cop and she was an honest person, and I was a liar and did all this intentionally. She said I purposely didn't clock in and the times were messed up. She also claimed a ton of reasons why I was fired. She claimed I almost killed one of the patients, none of which were listed on the paper they made me sign, and the judge called her out on that. I went home, printed my phone records and highlighted all the calls, letter from my landlord saying I hadn't moved, etc., and took it back to the labor board and dropped it off. I didn't get to see the judge again, so I don't know if the judge ever saw it, but I did win the case. Plus, the judge added 4 days because the last check was sent on a Friday before a 3-day weekend. I was only supposed to be paid until the postmark date, but I got paid till the following Tuesday, over $3,000. Also, the evil lady wasn't paying the ambulance drivers double overtime after 12 hours. So I let that slip while I was in the mediator's office, and she said she'd look into it. I hope they did. If you found yourself in some trouble getting access to that final paycheck, and you found out that every day they don't get it to you, they have to pay $150, would you willingly forego any more attempt to get that check, knowing eventually you can take it to court and get way more? Or do you think that's not worth the hassle and you would just bother them until they finally got the check to you? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Our next story is by Busy Election. I had to do something. My lifelong best friend's life was taken by her roommate in 2019. Her fiance and a couple of his friends and myself took on cleaning out the roommate's room after the police were done with the house for his family to pick up his things. It was rough, but we got the job done. While we were cleaning, I noticed an old moldy, just disgusting cat litter box with a lid in the corner of the room. He apparently had a cat months ago, but never cleaned the box and the cat ran away. I thought, that'll go to the dump pile, and moved on. When I was emptying his drawer, I found the roommate's high school diploma in its shiny little presentation folder they come with. I know these aren't the most valuable things people own, but I knew it was special. Without thinking much, I pulled out the diploma and shoved it in the folder right into the cat box and shook it around. The group went silent for a moment, then everyone started laughing. It was the least he deserved for taking our sweet friend. We decided to add the box with the diploma to the pile for his family to pick up. The family came to the house. I had to step out. They had publicly defended him, and I was very emotional about having to be near them. And when they left, all that was remaining from the pile was that stinky cat box and the diploma inside. I asked if they had noticed the diploma and was told they did, but didn't want to deal with digging it out and cleaning it up. Whoops. It was a tiny victory in a terrible time, and felt like the ultimate petty revenge I could get while he awaits trial. You took my best friend? I covered your diploma in cat poop. First of all, my condolences to OP and everybody else involved in the situation. That said, I can totally understand everything OP did. You can understand the reasoning, the motivations. Frankly, to me, obviously this is like the smallest, least worryful thing that's going to even happen to them over the coming time. All I can say is in the end, I hope true justice is served. Our next story is by Patty Cake. Even band geeks have bullies. About 30 years ago or so, when I was in middle school at a private Christian school, I encountered a bully in my band class. I started playing trumpet in 6th grade, and as 7th grade rolled around, I was able to move out of the beginner band class and into the ensemble class. Because we were a smaller school, middle schoolers and high schoolers were all together in this class to make a wind ensemble and marching band for football games. Being a newer player, I was last chair trumpet. For those that aren't aware of how things are in band class, being first chair of your section generally means you're the best player. So on and so forth, down to the last chair being the worst player. It's part of the band world where you can challenge the next player for their seat in an effort to work your way up the line. Having high schoolers in the ensemble meant there wasn't much room for my advancement. But sitting next to me in the second to last chair was my bully-to-be and the one challenge opportunity that I had to move up in line. We'll call him D. D and I are in the same grade and are about the same level of playing, but D likes to pick on me about being last chair and the worst player. He's generally a jerk. I go to the director after class and issue the challenge. Once you challenge someone, the director picks out some music, either from your ensemble pieces or elsewhere, and typically gives an amount of time for you to both practice it. After your practice time, you both play the pieces individually during the band class in front of everyone, with the challenger playing first. The director announces the winner for all to hear. Once a decision is made, you cannot challenge again or be challenged back for several months to prevent instant challenge backs. The director approves my challenge and announces it in the next class while handing us the pieces we'll be using. We're given 1 week to practice. I work my butt off practicing because I do not want to lose to D. A week rolls around and we take our seats and start out the band class with our challenge. D and I share a music stand between us. As we both place our music on the stand, I notice that his music is untouched with no notes or pencil markings, where I've marked mine up because it's in a difficult key, especially for only a second-year trumpet player. I didn't want to miss any sharps or incidental notes in the piece. Being the challenger, I have to play first. My 30-year-old memory wants to say I played it flawlessly, but I know reality is more that I played it pretty okay for a second-year trumpet player. It was obvious that I practiced. D looked stunned. He didn't expect me to play as well as I did. It's his turn to play, and as he begins, I notice that he's looking at my copy of the music, not his own. I would guess that he didn't really look at it and wanted to use my markings to help him. While he's playing, I casually reach up and grab my copy of the music and put it back into my music folder. D falters as he has to try and find his place on his own copy of the music. He misses a lot of notes due to the difficult key, and it becomes obvious who has won the challenge. The director declares me as the winner, and we stand up and basically switch seats right at that moment. I am now no longer the last chair and worst trumpet player of the ensemble, but this is not yet where the story ends, but rather where the bullying escalates. As I mentioned earlier, D and I share a music stand and play the same trumpet part in the ensemble. Well, D is really pissed that he's now the last chair and tries to annoy me to no end during class every day. He does things like turning the shared music stand so I can't see it. He kicks my trumpet mutes into the section in front of us, empties my music folder onto the floor as I'm packing my trumpet up to go to the next class. Basically anything he can think of to annoy me. For some reason, he never challenged me back for my seat, but continued this type of behavior for months. I went to the director several times telling him what was going on and asking for help, but he said there wasn't really anything he could do. Eventually, I found out the end of my patience. On that particular day, he turned the stand once again so I couldn't see the music right in the middle of us playing. I stood up in the middle of class as everyone was playing, turned and calmly set my trumpet down on my chair, and then just exploded. I'm not even sure exactly what I said, but I know it was full of foul language with me ranting about all that he was doing to annoy me, and specifically about him moving the stand, and if he wanted the stand, he could have it. As I said that line, I punched him in the face, knocking him and his chair over backwards. I turned and grabbed the music stand and threw it on top of him, then calmly picked up the trumpet off my seat and sat back down. The room was dead quiet and all eyes were on me. I hadn't even noticed that everyone stopped playing. D slowly picked himself back up and fixed his chair and put the stand and music back and sheepishly sat back down. A few quiet laughs and gasps could be heard as the director tried to get things back under control again. We finished the class, and as I went on to my next class, I completely expected to be called into the principal's office for fighting and other things, especially in the Christian school atmosphere, and whatever foul words came out of my mouth. That call never came. The coolest band director ever. I guess he had seen the torment and heard my requests for help, and decided to not report the incident to the office. D never messed with me again. At the end of the school year, the director gave out awards to everyone. They were just fun awards. I received the Challenger Award that had the flavor text of, "For challenging D and staying as far ahead of him as humanly possible." I still have it. D didn't play in band the following year, and for 9th grade, we both went to different public schools. It wasn't until 11th grade that we ran into each other again. There was a field trip planned to go to Close Up in Washington, D.C., and several of the public schools had organized this trip together. The morning of the departure, everyone was meeting in the parking lot of my school to get on buses. As I'm waiting around in the parking lot, I catch a glimpse of D and he's walking right towards me. At this point for me, in high school, I'm about 5'8" and 125 pounds soaking wet. The guy walking towards me is a muscle-bound football player. I'm expecting the worst as D gets to me, but what I receive was an outstretched hand. I put my hand out tentatively, grabbing his as he begins to shake mine nervously, spouting off, "Hey OP, how you doing? It's been a really long time. I hope you're doing well. This is going to be a great trip, right? It's so good to see you. So you go to your high school? That's great, I'm over at my high school. Well, talk to you later." I'm stunned as he nervously stumbles through his word vomit and then turns and walks away. I guess I made a lasting impression. We're actually friends on Facebook, even today. Honestly, it doesn't surprise me that making an impression early on in somebody's life, and having that be a lasting impression, being so prevalent because it was probably very embarrassing, very different from what they've been experiencing their whole life. To me, it sounds like maybe it was for the better, hopefully. So I think overall it's kind of just interesting to look at. It's almost like a psychology study at that point, but it makes you wonder, to other people, do they act as bashful, or is it just OP because maybe they know OP will act up? Maybe they actually feel bad for how they treated OP. There's kind of a lot of possible theories, and it's kind of interesting to think about. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel, and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.